You're standing at the edge of a riverbank, watching the greatest army in the world tear itself apart. No swords are drawn. No arrows fly. 40,000 men, the pride of an empire that has crushed kingdoms like dry leaves, are collapsing into the mud. They're clawing at their throats, vomiting blood, dying of thirst beside a river full of water, because every well they've found is stuffed with rotting dogs. Every stream flows thick with the corpses of slaughtered livestock, thrown in miles upstream. The Sultan himself, the man they call the thunderbolt for the speed of his conquests, stands paralyzed. He cannot strike lightning at poison. He cannot behead a fever. He has marched the most feared military machine on earth straight into a biological weapon designed by a single old man who understood one truth. Survival doesn't reward the honorable. It rewards the merciless. Before we dive deeper into this nightmare, I'd be fascinated to know where in the world you're watching this from. It amazes me that we're piecing together these brutal medieval stories from different continents, connected by our shared hunger to understand what people were capable of when everything was on the line. Let me know in the comments. This is Wallachia, 1394, a sliver of land wedged between the Danube River and the Carpathian Mountains, caught in the jaws of history's most dangerous neighborhood. To the south, the Ottoman Empire is in full expansion mode, swallowing the Balkans piece by piece. To the north, Hungary watches nervously. And in the middle, ruling this impossible buffer state, is a man named Mircea. The chronicles will call him Mircea Cel Batran, Mircea the Old. Not because he's ancient yet, but because he will outlive everyone. He will outlive the Sultan who's coming to destroy him. He will outlive the crusaders who will mock him. He will outlive every noble who will betray him. And by the time he finally dies, 3 decades from now, he will have taught his descendants a philosophy that will birth legends and nightmares. But right now, in this autumn of 1394, he's simply a prince facing annihilation. Sultan Bayezid I is not a man accustomed to obstacles. 5 years ago, he strangled his own brother with a bowstring to secure his throne, a tradition in Ottoman succession meant to prevent civil war. He crushed the Bulgarian Empire. He shattered the Serbian army at Kosovo. He moves his forces with such terrifying velocity that castles surrender before his vanguard even appears on the horizon. When his scouts report that little Wallachia refuses to submit, refuses to pay tribute, refuses to acknowledge Ottoman suzerainty, Bayezid doesn't see a threat. He sees an insult that requires correction. He assembles 40,000 men, heavy cavalry in chain mail and plate armor. The elite Janissaries, Christian boys taken as children, converted to Islam, and forged into the finest infantry in the world. Sipahi horsemen who've crushed every army they've faced. This isn't an invasion force. It's a punishment expedition. Bayezid expects this to take weeks. A quick march, a siege or two, a new puppet ruler installed, and home before winter. Mircea looks at the same map and sees something entirely different. He sees a trap waiting to be sprung. His own army numbers perhaps 10,000, maybe less depending on which boyar nobles decide to show up. In a pitched battle on open ground, his forces would be crushed in an afternoon. So Mircea makes a decision that will define everything that follows. He decides to delete the battlefield. He doesn't just refuse to fight on the Sultan's terms. He refuses to let there be terms at all. He issues orders that must have seemed insane to his own people. Evacuate, every village within 100 miles of the Danube. Move the population into the mountains. Burn the crops. Not just the surplus, all of it. Burn the granaries. Poison the wells with dead animals. Slaughter livestock that can't be driven away, and throw the carcasses into every water source. Turn Wallachia into a country-sized grave. When the Ottoman army crosses the Danube, they step into a ghost world. The villages are empty, not hastily abandoned, but methodically emptied. The Ottomans find houses with doors still locked, churches with icons still hanging, but no people, no food, no livestock, just silence and the smell of burnt wheat. The soldiers are professionals. They don't panic, but there's something psychologically devastating about marching through a land where the inhabitants would rather destroy everything they own than let you have it. It's a rejection so absolute it feels supernatural. And then the attacks begin. Not battles, attacks. As the Ottoman column stretches through the forests, struggling through terrain they're not built for, Wallachian light cavalry materialize from the trees. A volley of arrows into the supply wagons. A quick slash at the stragglers. And then they're gone, melted back into the undergrowth before the Janissaries can form ranks. It happens again an hour later, and again that night. The Ottomans never see a Wallachian army. They see ghosts that strike and vanish. Sultan Bayezid is furious, but he's not stupid. He knows Mircea is baiting him, trying to exhaust his forces. But the Sultan is confident in his discipline and his supply lines. He pushes deeper, convinced that eventually the Wallachian prince will run out of room to retreat. He'll be forced to make a stand, and when he does, the full weight of Ottoman steel will crush him. What Bayezid doesn't realize is that every step forward is a step into a carefully designed kill zone. The terrain itself is becoming the enemy. This region, which the Turks will later name Deli Orman, the Mad Forest, is a nightmare for heavy cavalry. The ground is soft from autumn rains. The trees grow so thick that formations break apart. The roads, such as they are, turn into rivers of mud that suck at the hooves of armored horses. The Ottoman war machine, built for the open plains of Anatolia, is grinding to a halt in the Wallachia sludge. Carts carrying food and arrows sink to their axles. The Sipahi cavalry, magnificent in open battle, dismount and lead their horses through swamps. The army stretches into a thin, vulnerable line miles long. And every night the terror intensifies. Sleep becomes impossible. Just as the Ottoman soldiers settle into their tents, exhausted from the march, the forest erupts with sound. Drums, horns, howling that might be wolves or might be men imitating wolves. And then arrows, coming from the darkness in erratic bursts. A sentry drops with a shaft through his neck. A tent catches fire. Thousands of men scramble for weapons, certain that an attack is coming, but no attack comes. Just chaos, and then silence. An hour later it happens again. This is Mircea's masterpiece. He's not trying to win through force. He's trying to win through exhaustion and madness. He's stripping away the Ottomans' sanity, one sleepless night at a time. Soldiers begin seeing enemies in every shadow. They fire arrows at wind-blown branches. Disciplined phrase. And the deeper they march, the worse it gets. The poisoned water starts taking its toll. Dysentery spreads through the camp. Men who fought in a dozen campaigns are reduced to crawling to the latrines, their strength bleeding away. and then the scouts bring Bayezid news. The Wallachian army has stopped retreating. They've taken up position near the Arjek River, in a marshy valley surrounded by forest. To the Sultan, this finally looks like the confrontation he's been craving. It looks like Mircea has run out of room, run out of options. It looks like a mistake. It's not. The location is a place called Rovine. In Romanian, the word suggests something ruined or excavated. And Mircea hasn't just chosen this spot. He's engineered it. For days, his men have been digging. Trenches crisscross the only solid ground approaching the Wallachian position. They've concealed these ditches with brush and light soil, invisible to charging cavalry. They've sharpened wooden stakes and driven them into the mud at angles designed to impale horses. They've turned geography into a slaughterhouse. Mircea positions his forces in a crescent, backing into the forest. His center looks weak, undermanned, tempting, but his flanks, hidden in the tree line, are packed with archers, ipsa funnel. And Bayezid, desperate for a victory that will erase the humiliation of the past weeks, sees exactly what he wants to see. The Ottoman drums thunder on the morning of October 10th, 1394. The Sipahi cavalry, the finest heavy horsemen in the world, prepare for the charge. They've been insulted by peasants and forests for too long. Now they'll show what real warfare looks like. The horns blow. Thousands of armored horses surge forward, building speed, a tsunami of steel and fury racing toward the weak Wallachian center. The ground trembles. The air fills with the roar of men certain of victory, and then the earth opens up and swallows them. The hidden trenches, invisible under their camouflage of brush and dirt, collapse under the weight of the charge. The front line of cavalry plunges into the pits, horses impaling themselves on the sharpened stakes waiting below. The screams are immediate and horrific. But momentum is a cruel thing. The second wave can't stop. They crash into the backs of their fallen comrades, creating a catastrophic pileup of thrashing horses and crushed men. In seconds, the pride of the Ottoman Empire has been reduced to a writhing mass of agony in the mud. The thunderbolt has struck the earth, and the earth has shattered it. From the flanks, the Wallachian archers step out of the trees. At this range, they don't need to aim. They pour arrows into the chaos below. Ottoman armor designed to deflect sword strikes is useless against bodkin arrows, finding the gaps in the mail, the joints, the throats. Men who manage to crawl out of the trenches find themselves in a different nightmare. The mud, the heavy plate armor that symbolized Ottoman wealth and power, becomes a death sentence. Soldiers slip and fall, trampled by their own panicked horses, or they simply lie in the mire, too heavy to stand, drowning in inches of blood-mixed sludge. Mircea watches from the high ground. He doesn't send his infantry forward. He doesn't need to. The terrain and the arrows are doing the work. This is warfare as mathematics. He's spending the Sultan's lives like worthless coin while preserving his own tiny population. Every Wallachian who survives is irreplaceable. Every Ottoman who dies is just a number. Bayezid, watching from his command position, orders the Janissaries forward to salvage the disaster. But the narrow valley works against them. They can't form their disciplined shield walls. They have to climb over the carcasses of their own cavalry to reach the enemy. And every step of the way, invisible archers rain death from the tree line. By sunset, the field of Rovine is a graveyard. The noise is unbearable. not the clash of heroes, but the screams of men trapped and drowning in dirt. Bayezid the Thunderbolt, who has conquered kingdoms in days, has been stopped by a few ditches and an old man who knew how to dig. The retreat is conducted in silence. The Ottoman army limps back toward the Danube, leaving thousands of their finest soldiers rotting in the Wallachian mud. They leave behind their pride. They leave behind the myth of their invincibility. And Mircea, the small-time prince of a backwater principality, has done the impossible. He's humiliated a superpower. But history, as always, is a cruel teacher. Mircea doesn't return home to ticker-tape parades and eternal gratitude. He returns to find closed gates. The Wallachia nobility, the boyars, look at his victory and see only trouble. They know Bayezid. They know the Ottomans have endless reserves. They whisper that the Sultan will return, and when he does, his vengeance will be apocalyptic. So in a twist of irony that defines Balkan politics, these nobles decide the hero is a liability. While Mircea is still washing the mud of ravine from his boots, a faction conspires against him. They reach out to the retreating Ottomans with an offer: "We'll remove Mircea if you accept a more obedient ruler." Enter Vlad the Usurper, a man with a claim and a willingness to bow. Backed by Ottoman gold and treacherous boyars, Vlad seizes the throne. And Mircea, the man who just defeated the greatest army on earth, finds himself fleeing north into Transylvania, a king without a crown. This is the education Mircea receives. External enemies you can fight with tactics and terrain. Internal enemies smile while sharpening the knife. But Mircea isn't the type to accept exile quietly. He crosses the mountains into Hungary and begins planning. He knows King Sigismund is terrified of the Ottomans. He knows that fear makes allies. Within a year, Mircea has secured Hungarian support. He returns to Wallachia, and the boyars who betrayed him suddenly remember their loyalty when they see his army. He reclaims his throne, but this time he governs differently. He watches the nobles. He builds loyalty through fear and reward. He never forgets who turned on him, and when opportunity arrives, he takes it. In 1402, something extraordinary happens. A Mongol warlord named Timur, known in the West as Tamerlane, invades Anatolia. At the Battle of Ankara, he crushes the Ottoman army and captures Sultan Bayezid himself. The thunderbolt is imprisoned in a golden cage, displayed like a trophy, dying of humiliation. The Ottoman Empire fractures. Bayezid's sons go to war with each other in a brutal civil conflict that will last over a decade, and Mircea sees his opening. While other Christian rulers breathe sighs of relief, Mircea goes on the offensive. He becomes the kingmaker of the Balkans. He backs different Ottoman princes depending on which one serves Wallachian interests best. He funds their campaigns, hosts pretenders, and manipulates the succession. For years, the Sultan of the Ottomans is effectively chosen in the court of Wallachia. It's a masterclass in realpolitik. A divided Ottoman Empire is a weak Ottoman Empire. Mircea pushes his borders to the Black Sea. He controls trade routes and the mouth of the Danube. He styles himself as absolute ruler from the mountains to the sea. This backwater principality, this speed bump that was supposed to be crushed in weeks, has become the most powerful Christian state in southeastern Europe. But empires heal. By 1417, the Ottomans have reunited under Sultan Mehmed I, and Mircea is genuinely old now, in his 60s, an ancient age for a medieval warrior. The mad forest can't protect him forever. The Ottomans have learned. They've captured key fortresses. They're at the gates. And Mircea faces a final, agonizing choice. He can fight a suicidal war that will likely erase Wallachia from the map, turn it into a direct Ottoman province like Bulgaria. Or he can swallow his pride. He chooses survival. Mircea signs a treaty. He agrees to pay annual tribute, 3,000 gold ducats. And he does something that must have torn at his soul. He sends his own sons as hostages to the Ottoman court to guarantee his obedience. It looks like surrender. It's actually his greatest victory, because by paying the protection money, Wallachia remains autonomous. It keeps its laws, its religion, its identity, while the rest of the Balkans falls under direct Turkish administration. Wallachia survives as a distinct entity. But Mircea knows gold alone won't secure the future. He needs to harden his bloodline. He looks west to King Sigismund, who has founded a chivalric order dedicated to fighting the enemies of Christendom, the Order of the Dragon Societas Draconistarum. The symbol is a dragon with its tail wrapped around its neck, powerful even in death. Mircea's illegitimate son, Vlad, is inducted into this order. When Vlad returns to Wallachia wearing the dragon medallion, the common people don't understand Latin heraldry. They see the dragon and think of the old Slavic word for devil. Vlad becomes Vlad Dracula, Vlad the Dragon, or Vlad the Devil, and his son, a boy born in Caesarea, who will inherit all of his grandfather's cruelty, but arguably less of his restraint, will be known as the son of the dragon, Dracula. When Mircea the Old dies in 1418, buried in the stones of Kozia Monastery, he doesn't just leave a country, he leaves a philosophy, a rule book written in blood and mud. Survival requires you to become the terrain. Survival requires you to be willing to do what your enemy cannot imagine. History has a cruel sense of irony. The world remembers the grandson Vlad the Impaler, the vampire, the monster, the forests of impaled corpses. But it forgets the teacher. Vlad did not invent the tactics that made him infamous. He inherited them. When Vlad launched his night attack on Sultan Mehmed II in 1462, plunging the Ottoman camp into chaos, he was repeating a strategy first used by his grandfather, Mircea the Old, in 1394. When he burned his own lands and poisoned wells to starve the enemy, he was following Mircea's manual. The difference was scale. Mircea used terror like a scalpel, precise, controlled, and necessary for survival. Vlad used it like a brush, painting the world in blood. Mircea proved something revolutionary. A small nation could break a superpower, not by fighting harder, but by fighting smarter and dirtier. He understood asymmetric warfare centuries before the term existed. If you are small, you cannot afford honor. You must become the nightmare. In Romania, Mircea is not remembered as a monster. He is Mircea cel Batran, the wise, the elder. His face is on currency. His statues stand tall. While the world fears the grandson, Romanians revere the grandfather as a shield.